So, you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership.
Who grew up in a middle-class family, and my neighbors had nice lawns, and it was so good. I love the smell of freshly mown lawns in the morning. Kamala Harris talking to Bret Baier last night on the Fox News Channel. I don't think she answered a question, did she? The traditional concept of a news media interview with a presidential candidate has it that a journalist asks questions. The political candidate then answers those questions. That's not really what happened. I think Bret Baier, and once we learned about the circumstances too, I think Bret Baier did a solid job. I know not everybody loves Bret Baier. I think he's just great, and he asks many of the right questions. You really would need to, I think, put her in an electric chair and hold her there for hours and hours on end to ask her all of the questions that ought to be asked. But Bret Baier asked a whole bunch of them, and she has a demented obsession with President Trump. That's quite clear. Anytime, and it was almost every time, that she didn't have an answer to the question that was asked, she's, well, Trump. It's an authentic mental illness. It is a form of dementia that I think medical science should categorize and put in the textbooks, because we're going to be talking about it for some time to come, particularly after he wins re-election and the crazy people. Now, speaking of his winning re-election, yesterday on CBS Fake News in the morning, they had their elections expert on, and their elections expert said, well, I know we've got Election Day coming up, as we laughingly call it, since we now vote for 3 months or whatever the hell it is, because the Democrats have corrupted everything, including the way we elect people. I just want to have elections like they have in France. I've never said before that I'd like to see America do anything the way they do it in France, but now I'm ready to say the French do elections right, and we do elections wrong, very, very wrongly, terribly, and it's because of the left and Democrats, and they seized on the Wuhan Red Death that came out of Wuhan, China, where they have the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where they study germs and alter germs, but never mind that, the Democrats still lie about that. Amazing stuff. But honestly, the CBS guy, he said, you know, we're going to have Election Day, but don't expect that we're going to know the winner on Election Day of the election. He said, don't expect, because it's going to take days after Election Day, because the Democrats, the filthy, rotten Democrats, they've destroyed absolutely everything in the United States of America. What they haven't destroyed, they're on their way to destroying. It's their mission. It's the fundamental transformation of America, to make America unrecognizable. That's just as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said that his father and his uncle John F. Kennedy would find today's Democrat Party unrecognizable. Their goal, their program, their plan is to make the United States of America unrecognizable. And one of the ways to do that is make our elections, things that you can't trust. Just scratch the surface on that. Yeah, but the CBS guy, and I've got that for you. Oh, there's, Election Day. We're not going to find out who the winner is on Election. And it's Georgia. Georgia could take days. And it all will come down to Georgia now, I guess. And multiple states will take days to find out who won. The Democrats will be suing everybody and changing the rules as they like to do. But never mind that. So the guy, the CBS election expert, said, don't expect that we're going to find out who the winner of the election, who the president is on Election Day or election night, days and maybe days and days later, you should expect, because they're so corrupt. They're so banana republic. So they should all dress like Carmen Miranda, but with armbands. They should add the armbands to the Carmen Miranda thing. Because I think all Democrat men, at least, are transgender. Is that true? I saw that. I think that was a Time Magazine article. Was that a Time Magazine? That all Democrat men are now transgender? So let's not go and get our hopes up that we're going to know who the president is on Election Day or on Election Night, because CBS and the Democrats have a plan, and the plan is we're not going to find out. Amazing stuff. So we had the big Brett Baier interview last night with Kamala Harris, which in my humble estimation didn't go well at all for Kamala Harris, who was awful and horrible and terrible and creepy and obsequious and oleaginous and didn't answer questions and just not a quality person and not a quality candidate either for president of the United States. She's so awful. But we've got a bunch of that for you, of course. And the news media, they loved her. They just think that everything she said and everything she didn't say, just wonderful. And what's the word they used, Michael, the news media? Testy, which is, there's a little bit of irony in there potentially, that they're talking about being testy, the interview. And she was talking over him. He tried to ask a question, and she'd start talking over him long before he got to the actual question. But he's setting up a question. He's like, here's the subject, and now here comes my question. She just starts talking over him like she's having a mental issue of some kind. And at MSDNC and beyond, it's like, well, if he didn't keep talking over her, well, Fox News would never talk over Trump like that. Yeah, Trump never gets talked over. That's for sure. He never gets shouted down. Not at the debates, they talk over him, the fake journalists, for the love of God. But never mind that. So the news media, they gave Kamala another tongue bath. That's right, it's another tongue bath. They love the tongue bath. Their tongues must feel awful at this point from all the tongue baths that they give. But in the media, they think she did a great job. They said it was a testy interview, which is not a testicular reference, I don't think. But you never know with these people. And I think Brett Baier did as well as he could under the circumstances. Now, they had agreed that Kamala would show up at 5 p.m. They would do a 25 to 30-minute interview. They would air it unedited and in its entirety, unlike CBS and ABC and CNN and the rest, with their pre-recorded interviews where they clean up and edit anything that made Kamala look stupid, which is almost everything. But instead of showing up at 5 o'clock and doing a 25 to 30-minute interview that would air in its entirety, they showed up late, and Kamala finally sauntered in, sashayed in at about 5:15. I think it was 13 minutes after 5. And she sat down, and they said, well, we can't possibly do 25 to 30 minutes. And, of course, Fox News was like, well, neither can we, because we're planning on doing it from 5 o'clock to 5:30 and then turning it around and putting it on our 6 o'clock show. But you guys, even though you made an agreement, as adults might do, you have betrayed that agreement. You lied to us. You had no intention of, and they did it, of course, because they're weasels, because they're snakes. They did it to mess with Fox News and to just knock the whole schedule off, because they're punks and pissants. Can you say that word? Because they're such awful, terrible, untrustworthy people. And it's a lesson to the rest of the world that Kamala will sit down and make an agreement with you, and her so-called people will sit down and make an agreement with you, and they will betray that agreement when it comes time to follow through. They gave their word. We'll be there at 5 o'clock. They betrayed that. We'll do a 25 to 30-minute interview. They betrayed that. And then when they saw it was not going well for her, they had 4 or 5 people standing behind Kamala, waving their arms frantically in the air and rap, we've got it. And Brett Baier is like, they're telling me pretty hard we've got a rap over here because it's like a third world country. Honestly, Egypt has a better political leadership than Kamala Harris. We should send her to Egypt. Maybe it probably wouldn't work out very well for her there either. Throw her into Tahrir Square and see what happens. But we've got that for you, the Brett Baier interview. And he explained, oh, yeah, they agreed to show up at 5. They didn't. They agreed to a 25 to 30-minute. Then they betrayed that. They lied and they cheated and they sneaked around. It's almost like Doug Emhoff with The Nanny, lying, cheating, sneaking, making a promise and then not living up to that promise, because that's what Democrats do. You can't trust them, and they prove that hundreds, if not thousands of times a year on a macro level. Amazing stuff. Speaking of lying and cheating and stealing and deceiving, the FBI, we learned yesterday, has been lying to us about crime stats, because now the FBI is about as trustworthy as Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Barack Obama and the Democrat Party, Hillary Clinton. Amazing stuff. Yes, sir. But the FBI, it's like they put out a press release yesterday, and it said, did we say down? That was the banner headline on the press release. Did we say down? We meant to say up. When we said crime was down, that was just a one-word error. We meant to say crime was up. Murder and rape and carjacking and violent crime and assaults. I know we told you that all these crimes, they were down 2%, 2.5%, but it turns out they're up 4.5%. And that means that we're lying Sacagawea, number 1,842. Yeah, not down, up. See, that's the thing with these people. So there's a couple of the big stories going on tonight. Honestly, the FBI, it's just so awful. I mean, I know people that have been career FBI agents who are good people, and the deep state, the permanent bureaucracy, the Democrat corruptniks, some of whom, like they're Soviet spies or something, have dedicated a lifetime of work to corrupting a once sacred and once revered agency, the FBI. And some of them have literally, like Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, they've dedicated their lives. They were left-wingers in the United States that gave the nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union, and we put them in the electric chair and executed them both. And it was glorious. It was a glorious thing. But turns out a whole lot of people that have been career FBI, career Justice Department, career intelligence people are no better than the Julius and Ethel Rosenbergs of the world. Yeah, I've played it before. When Ethel Rosenberg was executed in the gas chamber, they had witnesses, as they always do for executions, and one of the witnesses described what he saw when they turned the juice up on Ethel Rosenberg, who was guilty as hell, by the way. And the Democrats still lie about her and say, oh, no, she was innocent. She was just she was nothing of the kind. But when she was executed in the electric chair, it was kind of fun.
She was given more electricity, which started a game that kind of a ghastly plume of smoke that rose from her head and went up against the skylight overhead.
A ghastly plume of smoke that went up from her head. Went up to the skylight. It's nice that in the execution chamber with the electric chair, they've got a skylight. So, hey, nice. There's nice natural light in here. And then a ghastly plume of smoke rises from your head. But at least there's a skylight because, natural light is better than artificial light. Wouldn't you agree? I think so. Jasmine agrees. Natural light is better than artificial light. Yeah, looking at our ceiling now where there's no natural light at all. Yeah. Even though we're on the top floor, but we have no natural light. So I digressed into the execution of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. But what's more fun than that, honestly? Commies, see, the only good commie is a commie that's had a lot of electricity run through them and with a ghastly plume of smoke rising from their heads. But I digress. So Kamala Harris turned up late and whittled down Fox interview, says presenter. It's making news all over the world so that everybody knows that she's not good to her word and that she can't be trusted. Amazing stuff. And the FBI. The FBI lied to us again about crime stats. Oh, no, crime's really down. And then every dim-witted liberal, which I know doesn't narrow it down much, in the United States went around saying, oh, no, crime is down under Joe Biden, when everybody knows. I mean, if you have any instinct at all, no matter where you live, you know that crime is up across the country, and they got illegal alien gangs all over the country murdering and raping and causing mayhem. Kamala was asked about that last night. She didn't answer, as you might expect. She takes responsibility for nothing ever because she's a leftist, not a liberal, mind you, a leftist. And what's she doing today? She's harvesting the organs of unborn innocent people, but never mind that. Yeah, the stealth edit. FBI quietly revises violent crime stats. I told you all along what was going on with the crime stats. And knowing that the Justice Department, the Bureau of Justice Statistics, and the FBI were lying, and the news media lying, and every filthy, stinking Democrat lying, oh no, crime's down. Nobody believed him. Well, I certainly didn't believe him, and I said so. And once again, boy, I'd got my record of being right is almost astonishing, isn't it? There should be a trophy or something. And we're at 888-630-9625. Democrat violate. They're a violent, crazy criminal bunch, aren't they? And they lie a lot. And the deep state, the FBI, the permanent bureaucracy, the Department of Justice, the Bureau of Justice Statistics, lying and lying and lying, and then years later they get caught, and they don't care. Let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Mike calling from the great state of Maryland. Michael, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet, man. That's why we're here.
Well, hey, first let me just say, and I'm sure I'm speaking for all the listeners around the country, I mean the world, that you do an awesome job. I feel like you saved me about 8 to 10 hours of research through all the media, and you give us that Sports Center view of what's going on in the world and all the crazy stuff in politics. So just thanks a lot, man. You really saved me a ton of time and make me more sane.
Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to be of some service.
Well, hey, the deep state is the thing I was going to talk about. When Trump wins, I think he's going to win. But when he wins, it's not just the generals he has to deal with, like the West Point grad had mentioned yesterday. I've been working in various agencies for about 20 years, and the deep state is a real thing. There's like about 1,000 Vindmans that are pretty high up throughout. And if you just do a straw poll, essentially, in the DMV agency area, I mean, it's 70-80% lib. You could just count the number of Subarus, Priuses, and Teslas in the parking lot, and it just pretty much gives you an idea what we're up against.
Yes, it does.
I'm just letting you know, I think if he wins, it's not just so much that he's going to be able to try to work out his policies, that there's going to be people that are actively working against him. They're willing to break the law, as we've seen, and they're going to defy and deny and try to make him look bad. So.
And they get away with it every time. The laws do not apply to them. Well, I would have liked to have spoken to Mike for longer, actually. We have this clock because we're not NPR. We pay our own bills. We have lights in here. We have to pay our own electric bill. Unlike National Panhandler Radio suckling on the taxpayer teat and spewing propaganda for the anti-American left, the Democrat Party. But Mike was talking about the deep state, and when President Trump wins, one of the things Mike said is there are 1,000 Vindmans, and he said he's been operating inside of the government, and 1,000 Vindmans. That Alexander Vindman, his brother, is running for Congress in Virginia to destroy America. And when did Ukraine become such a centerpiece of American politics? The Vindman brothers, they're twin brothers. They're Ukrainian American, and the Vindman brother, creepy. He's here to destroy from within. He's more like Julius Rosenberg, I think, than Ethel Rosenberg. But amazing stuff. And Mike is right, talking about the 70-80% Democrat constituency here in the D.C. metropolitan area. And the Democrats wheedling their way in over time to the permanent bureaucracy. And Michael Piercy and I were talking about this, and I've talked about it here before. But, the first Republican president ever was Abraham Lincoln, of course. Everybody knows that, right? Raise your hand, Abraham Lincoln. He really infuriated the Democrats with the Emancipation Proclamation ending their slavery, which the Democrats supported and loved slavery. They love slavery and plantations and the bullwhip and lynching. They're the Democrat Party. Now, how many people are killed by Democrats in the United States every year? A great many thousands, many thousands. But Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president ever, and he was shot in the head and murdered by a Democrat named John Wilkes Booth, of course, and he was an actor, too, in case there's any doubt at all. So there's the first Republican presidency, and the first Republican president murdered by a Democrat. And it wasn't too much. That was 1865. In 1881, what is that, 16 years later, James Garfield, another Republican president, was shot and killed, murdered by this Charles Guiteau. This guy, he's got a French name. And then in 1901, which again is 20 years after that, William McKinley, another Republican president, was murdered. And eventually, much later, John F. Kennedy, 1963, so that was 62 years after McKinley, John F. Kennedy was shot and killed in Dallas, Texas, in Dealey Plaza, driving by in an open-top Lincoln. And he was shot and killed by a communist. So the only Democrat ever shot and killed was shot and killed by a communist. Or, in column B, the alternative is he was killed by the deep state, because that's the only other possibility. And President Trump said that he would, the CIA is still sitting on file cabinets full of documents on the John F. Kennedy assassination. Why would they be keeping this secret? We're going to be a century later after not too long, and the CIA is still keeping this stuff secret. You guys work for us, so get out of the way and open the file drawer. And so 3 American presidents, we've had 4 American presidents assassinated, 3 of them Republicans, including the first ever Republican who ended slavery. And John F. Kennedy shot in the head and killed by a communist who said, "I'm a patsy." But, he was a commie, so all commies are patsies. And one of my, not one of my favorite things, but a fun thing to point out is that Lee Harvey Oswald's widow, who he found in the Soviet Union when he was going and hanging in the Soviet Union like Bernie Sanders. But he married a woman, Marina Oswald, and she is alive and well and living in the United States. And the Oswalds, Lee Harvey and Marina Oswald, they had 2 children. And their 2 children, last time I looked, are alive and well and living in the United States. Isn't that kind of fascinating? And the widow of Lee Harvey Oswald, alive and well, living in the United States, and, unmolested, hasn't, as far as we know, and might hang out with a lot of Democrats, I don't know. But she was a Soviet woman from the city of Severodvinsk on the White Sea. I've been to Severodvinsk on the White Sea, visiting a Soviet submarine facility, but that's not important now. And, of course, Ronald Reagan was shot and nearly killed. Donald Trump was shot, and he was nearly killed. And Teddy Roosevelt was shot. And let's see, Gerald Ford was shot at twice by 2 women. One of them, they were both Democrats, and one of them was a member of the Manson family. Squeaky Fromm, Lynette Squeaky Fromm, shot at Gerald Ford and missed. Fortunately, nice man. And then, of course, Sarah Jane Moore shot at him. She was a Democrat also. The Democrats they have a long history of political violence in the United States. Then, riots and terrorist groups from the KKK to the Students for a Democratic Society to the Weather Underground and on and on. You might think that they're violent. You might think that they're racist, too. And you might be correct. Isn't that amazing? Little American history in a thimble. Womp, womp, womp. Hey, Democrats, stop shooting people. How about that? Just a tip for, it's like how to be a good neighbor. Don't shoot your neighbors. Don't shoot presidents. And after Donald Trump was shot not so long ago through the ear, having just turned his head to the right to look at that big placard that he was going to make reference to. Otherwise, it would have been the Zapruder film all over again. And then a second Democrat showed up alongside one of his golf courses. He owns many golf courses, with another rifle, plotting to assassinate him. Then another would-be assassin was arrested in Idaho. And then we have the Pakistani would-be assassin that was arrested in New York that was sent here by Iran. And the Democrats fund Iran. There's something terribly wrong with the Democrat Party. What the heck do you think it is? Absolutely amazing. All right, we have a lot of audio to get to for you from the Bret Baier interview with Kamala Harris. We don't have any audio on the FBI saying, "Oh yeah, we lied," but we do have the lying media and President Trump and the ABC debate, the presidential debate. The David Muir, he jumped in to interrupt Trump to say, "Oh no, the FBI says crime is down." And that's because David Muir and ABC carry the government lie. And they give the government a tongue bath, don't they? Yes, they do. Womp, womp, womp. They shave their tongues in the morning. Kind of weird behavior, I've got to say. All right, let's go to the phones. Let's go to Doug calling from North Carolina. Douglas, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris. I was watching the Bret Baier interview last night, and Baier asked Vice President Harris multiple times about things that happened during her administration, and she kept on blaming Donald Trump. And it happened probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 times.
Yep.
Then she has the temerity to say Donald Trump needs to take responsibility for what happened during his term.
Yeah, we laughed out loud.
Rather laughable.
Yeah, we laughed.
And do journalistic ethics prevent Bret Baier from saying, "Madam, you're full of baloney"?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, but you don't find a lot of journalistic ethics out there these days. David Muir is not going to come on the air tonight and say, I rudely interrupted President Trump during the presidential debate and I corrected him. Turns out that my correction was wrong, it was false, and that the FBI and the government have been lying to us, which is what David Muir would do if he had any journalistic ethics. But at Fox News, they're held to a much higher standard journalistically, and when it comes to telling the truth and not telling the truth, because the rest of the news media constantly attacks Fox News and Bret Baier, which they're doing today, and they were doing last night after the interview. But the rest of the news media not held to any standard at all.
Amazing.
It is. Well, you were correct. I mean, you zeroed in on it and you spotted it, and you're absolutely right. She blamed Trump for she came loaded, and then the Democrat media will use those sound bites of Kamala saying, "Well, oh yeah, Trump, mean tweets," which is basically what she said over and over again.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's appalling.
Well, actually, it's not unbelievable. I see it happen too often.
Yeah, the old phrase, it's shocking and appalling. I like to say I'm often appalled but rarely shocked, because I've become accustomed, as all of us have as consumers of corrupt media, I've become accustomed to being lied to by these Democrat front groups masquerading as news organizations who carry whatever water they're told to carry by the Democrat Party. And you're right, blame Trump. Well, wait a minute. And Bret Baier jumped in a couple of times, and he said, but wait, you've been in the White House for 3.5 years, and this happened on your watch. And she blamed Republicans for not voting for that phony amnesty bill that they call a border security bill when it's not a border security bill. And Bret Baier jumped in and said, I'm sorry, but these murderers came in that murdered Laken Riley and others before you guys even presented that bill. So it's got nothing to do with that bill. But then she just kept attacking Trump. And then her staffers started waving their arms in the air saying, we got to wrap this. It's time to end this, because they're not accustomed to taking questions from reporters on the issues that are important to the American people, like the economy and millions of illegal aliens and Venezuelan gang members and the illegal alien gang members that the Democrats waved into the country, raping and murdering women from college students to mothers of 5. And they never have to take a question on any of this, because our news media is the most corrupt institution in America. Right, Doug?
Well, as for the staffers, it reminded me of the debate between Governor DeSantis and Governor Newsom last fall when they had to go an extra half an hour, and Governor Newsom's wife said, "No, we're done here. I've had enough of watching them get beaten up."
Well, and that's why I say it's good to be a Democrat, because they're protected in all kinds of ways that Republicans could never be protected by a corrupt news media. It's Soviet-style media. It really is. But in the Soviet Union, it was kind of excusable, because if they didn't toe the party line in the Soviet Union, they'd be thrown into a gulag, and they'd die in the gulag with no teeth. So people had legitimate reason to fear the people that were given jobs by the government as reporters, or they'd be thrown off of rooftops, which Vlad the Impaler still likes to do from time to time. But here in the United States, they volunteer to be ignorant, corrupt party apparatchiks, and I find that to be absolutely inexcusable. It's dishonorable, and they're obviously not raised to have a sense of honor and integrity, which is a real problem in our culture right now.
Now, Mark Twain comes to mind to me.
Mm-hmm.
If you read the news, you're misinformed, or if you don't read the news, you're uninformed. If you read the news, you are misinformed.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's absolutely right. Yeah, and it was a good line. And that means that the news media has been corrupt for that long, but I don't think they've ever been as corrupt as they are now.
And maybe all these politicians should be thrown in jail for misinformation.
Well, that's right. I mean, Hillary Clinton says that there should be civil and even criminal penalties for people that spread misinformation, and that means we'd have to have a gulag just for the news media people, because there are so many of them. They are so numerous now that we're going to have to take over, I don't know, a piece of Connecticut or something. Well, I don't want to take a piece of a great state like Idaho or Montana. So we're going to maybe California. We'll build a gulag in East LA. I think that's probably the way to go. Amazing stuff. But listen, Doug, thank you for paying close attention and being aware and being a well-informed voter, because we need more well-informed voters, don't we? Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
Thank you, Doug. And look, I've got audio from the Bret Baier interview with Kamala from last night, which honestly, and it's tough. Yesterday, I spoke a little bit about how Bret Baier's in a tough place. A lot of pressures from a lot of different directions on him. And I thought he did a very good job, if not an A+, at least a very good job. And the thing is, it's not his job to beat up on her. And it's his job to ask straightforward questions that are important to the American people, and it's her job to answer them. I think Bret Baier did his job, and Kamala Harris corruptly did not do her job. But Democrats, the left, are so accustomed to not having to answer any question. You can see why they'd get into the habit.
Whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrent.
By the way, Joe Biden started bombing another country yesterday. It's not a big deal because Democrats are always bombing countries. They're almost always Muslim countries. And, then they get the Muslim vote in Hamtramck, lock in Michigan, because they've got the jihad vote in their back pocket. But Joe Biden and the Democrats, we learned, deploying the B-2 bomber. You're familiar with the B-2 bomber, the stealth bomber, the bat-winged bomber. A very beautiful airplane, a really cool airplane. And they're $2 billion each, $2 billion, the stealth bomber. And the B-2 bombers, which have to deploy from the United States of America, they're only stationed in the United States, at White Man Air Force Base in Missouri. And I've been to Whiteman, and I've been aboard a B-2 bomber. I was aboard and in the cockpit. It's the only place you can go, really, other than the Bombay, but in the cockpit of the Spirit of Texas. They're always the Spirit. It's called the B-2 Spirit. And each one is named for a state. And I was aboard the Spirit of Texas at Whiteman Air Force Base. The plane is surrounded with signs that say, "Halt! Lethal force lethal force authorized from this point on. And if you get too close to try to touch it, they're authorized to shoot and kill you because, it's because it's an airplane. They like it, so they don't want people touching it, stuff like that. Yeah, but bombing Houthi rebels in Yemen and using the B-2 bomber out of Missouri, the stealth bomber, to do it. Joe Biden, Barack Obama bombed 8 different countries while he was president, which is a record, post-World War II record. Democrats love dropping bombs. They're the party of war. Let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to how many Houthis did they kill? Nobody knows. Nobody cares. They just, we bombed them. And that's it. Then the media moves on. Let's go to Karen, calling from the great state of Michigan. Karen, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris. How are you
Karen.
doing?
Just great. How about you?
Good. I understand you're almost in the neighborhood this weekend.
That's true. Flying to Chicago tonight.
Very beautiful here. Hey, I was just calling because I'm sure you've noticed this, that when Kamala talks, she does that odd thing where she has her hand extended out, and it looks like she's holding a little piece of paper. And it's very intentional. Barack Obama does the exact same thing. And then she bobs her head when she speaks, like with authority. Last night she was doing it with both of her hands because I think she was nervous. But I think Barack Obama trained her. She must have gone through hours of training with him. And it makes me wonder if when they were reporting all these cars over at Barack Obama's home that were, the feds, that they weren't training her to get ready to take over for Biden all along. And they even planned that debate so early, anticipating that they would kick him out.
Well, Barack Obama is the model by which all other Democrats live, and they aspire to be more like Barack Obama. She also crossed her legs and then crossed her arms over the top of her crossed legs a lot yesterday, looking nervous.